Hello and welcome to Zenatta Consulting's monthly webinar series. This is our May 2022 webinar, and it is on Zoho Books. This is our full product overview and tutorial. From Zenatta Consulting, I am Brett Martin.
And I'm Tyler Colt, and let's get right on into the tutorial.
All right. We've got quite a bit to cover here today, Tyler. So we are going to go over what is Zoho Books, product overview, settings, chart of accounts, sales process, purchase process, everything you need to know to get started with Zoho Books. So with that, why don't we talk about what is Zoho Books? All right, so Zoho Books, pretty much straightforward. It is a cloud-based accounting software. If you're familiar with QuickBooks, if you're familiar with Xero, any of the FreshBooks, basically it's a way to pull in your bank accounts, balance your checkbooks, see where your spending's going, send out invoices, track your payables, all sorts of things. It's part of Zoho One. It's part of the Zoho Finance Suite, or you can buy it separately. And it's a great replacement for any of those. And it's got an extremely affordable pricing on it as well, whether it's in a bundle or standalone. There's even a free version of Zoho Books, I believe, that you can get. So great product. And with that, let's dive into the product overview.
Alrighty, so straight to the good stuff here. We've got Zoho Books open in front of us. As you'd expect, kind of the first page here is a top-down dashboard. Now, there's a lot more reporting that you might want to do with your data out of Zoho Books, but this is kind of just a way to get a high-level view of what's going on from an accounting basis. It's going to show your receivables, your payables, any of your cash in, and kind of overall cash flow for given periods of time. Top down on some expenses. If you've got connected banks or connected credit cards, you can kind of see all that flow through here as well. Again, kind of moving the overview forward. On the left-hand side, these are going to be the main navigators that will help you kind of get around the application. You'll see that some of them are kind of expandable, right? So if we go down the list here, we can start with items. Items, there are a few different types. If you want to sell a product or a service, they're both going to be classified as items. That can trip people up a little bit. So even a service is going to be a type of item that's sold. If we take a quick peek into an item, you can track all the things that you would expect to. You can assign it a SKU, give it some dimensions if you want to run your packaging out of here, associate it with a sales and a purchase account, kind of mapping it to your GL codes, which Brett will get into a little bit later. Define that initial sale price and cost price as well, so that when your team is working with this, it'll always have a default, which you can then always edit as needed. Different kind of type of item that you can look at within here that we're not going to go into in too much detail are different types of item groups. So an item group would be something like, you sell a t-shirt in a variety of sizes and colors. You might want to consider that t-shirt as a whole an item with these different kind of variants or options within it. You can also do composite items, which are used for if you're selling something that's kind of like a bundle, right? So in their little image here, they have, if you sold a shirt, some shorts, and a belt, right? And that was all going to be kind of sold as one item. You can surely create a composite item off of that and then manage the inventory of that bundle kind of separately than the inventory of those components that go into it. Inventory adjustments here, a little specific if you have Zoho inventory plugged in. A lot of people do. This is basically just a way to adjust your stock on hand for specific items kind of on an as needed basis. Banking, you can connect in your external banks and credit cards directly into Zoho Books. That will allow you to essentially pull in all of your transactions into a running feed. And then all you'll need to do is kind of categorize them against, invoices if they're a payment, or expenses if it's something that's, a cash out from your accounting. Jumping into kind of the meat of things here, and we're going to go through these next two kind of quickly because we'll circle back around and go through them in more detail later. But you're going to be doing a lot of selling and purchasing from within Zoho Books. So over here under the sales tab is where you'll find things like customers, right? Where you'll have a variety of different companies and contact people at those companies with whom you do business. A quick 30,000 foot view here. You can create and send out estimates, which can be digitally accepted. You can manage sales via sales orders, which kind of connect your estimate through to the future invoice that you're sending out, as well as to packages if you are going to be managing physical inventory and shipping from within Zoho Books and inventory as well. Packages, again, they are unique to Books when you have the inventory integration turned on. But if you do have that activated, you can kind of track the full life cycle of a package here. Invoices, again, really important record. These are how you'll actually get paid. These can be paid digitally via either credit card or ACH directly through Zoho Books. They support a variety of different gateways that will allow you to do that natively. All payments received are going to record themselves here as well under the sales section so that you could see, maybe these two different payments were applied to one invoice because you take 50-50 on a project or something like that. So it'll actually create their own record for each payment that comes in. For those who do recurring billing, you can actually set up an invoice that will automatically send, every month, every quarter, and basically hit that client account automatically for you. And then via sales returns and credit notes, you can kind of manage your refund and return process against those sales. They kind of treat that as part of the sales process here within Zoho Books. Moving on to purchases, in the same way that you'll have a customer for a sale, of course, you're going to have a vendor for a purchase. Vendors can be connected to a variety of different items that you buy from them. That'll be useful when you're creating your purchase orders and doing any of your billing out to those vendors. Expenses, this is kind of an interesting one. You can track it natively within Zoho Books, just kind of have people log them and apply them into the system that way. As you'll see with our little pop-up here, you can also use Zoho Expense if you have that included. If you're on Zoho One or Finance Plus, that's going to be part of your subscription. If you have Expense included, go ahead and use that. It's just a cleaner experience, and all of the data is still going to flow directly into Zoho Books once those are submitted and approved. Recurring expenses, really, it's just if you had something monthly and you wanted to just automatically create that expense every month, you can do that here. Purchase orders, again, kind of a workhorse record here in the purchases section. So, a purchase order, you're basically able to raise an order for a variety of different products against a particular vendor. You can send that out from them. And then once you actually receive it from them, you can receive against that purchase order, which lets Zoho Books know that you have that in your physical inventory. Then you can convert it over here to a bill. So in the same way that you would invoice off of a sales order, you will create a bill off of a purchase order to basically mark that as paid or begin the process to pay for that or that purchase order. Again, kind of two sides of a coin. You'll have a list of your payments received over inside of sales, but inside the purchases section, you'll have a list of payments that you have made. All of those payments are going to be kind of connected up to a bill record so that you can know exactly what that payment was actually for. Last but not least here, if you do have a recurring bill that you wanted to send out, maybe you have a monthly purchase of inventory from a vendor. It's like clockwork. You're going to buy that every single month until you tell it not to. You can go ahead and create a recurring bill off of that so that you don't have to create it manually each individual month. And then if you do have any type of return out to a vendor, so maybe they send you product, 10% of it is broken, you can actually create a vendor credit to log that against that vendor so that you remember that, hey, you might actually be able to save some money on a future purchase order because you have some credits on file with that particular vendor. I'll touch on these next sections just quickly here. Sales and purchases, again, are really your bread and butter here within Zoho Books. If you do want to track time and kind of track that type of information in Books, you can do that via the projects and timesheet settings. In this case here, these are actually connected over to Zoho projects. You'll see this little check mark here indicates that you are actually having a project in a different application. All of that data is still going to roll up here into Zoho Books. That can be really useful. So if you are someone who's doing implementation work, where you might need to, roll up everybody's time on a project and invoice off of it, if you're doing anything that's hourly, or kind of get a nice export to run payroll in a third-party system, you can use the projects and timesheets for that pretty nicely here. Lastly, under the accountant section, you could do a whole webinar just on the accounting functionality here within Zoho Books. We'll fly through this relatively quickly here. As you'd expect, when you have your chart of accounts kind of lined up and set up, sometimes you have to make adjustments via journal entries. So you can do that here within the accountant section. So if you do need to make any adjustments after the fact, you have that ability. These can be a one-time or a recurring journal. So if there's something that you're going to regularly have to do, you can just automate that by making it recurring. Using bulk updates here. So this is basically a way if you needed to significantly change, right, some data that was associated with invoices, purchase orders, really any of these big records. You'll need to do that through a bulk update. Won't go down the rabbit hole here, but it's basically just some extra steps to make sure that everything in your accounting stays proper when you are making a big bulk change to the data that you're feeding into the system. Here under our chart of accounts, Brett's going to cover this in more detail, but you'll have a variety of set kind of default accounts as well as the ability to create some custom accounts within here. Budgets, honestly, we don't find ourselves setting these up too much for our clients, but you can actually create a budget and track specific expenses against those budgets to make sure that you're kind of keeping within your expectations of cost. We'll skip transaction locking here and jump into reports. So under reports, they're going to give you a huge bank of kind of default reports that you can just pull from. So of course, all your business overview, your P&L, cash flow statement, balance sheet, you're going to need to have all of these. A couple new things they added, a couple of those key performance ratios they're going to calculate for you automatically here. Variety of different sales reports, by customer, by item, by salesperson, as well as reports around your receivables, payments, so on and so forth. Any other reporting here that you might not have, you can either try to create it as just a basic kind of custom report, or go ahead and bump it over to Zoho Analytics and do really anything that you could imagine with your data on that side of the house. Again, if you are on Zoho One, that's going to be included with your existing subscription. Lastly here, up in the top right, you do have your own little user icon. This will get you to your kind of account management page. You'll have a full kind of help window here. The one thing I do want to highlight is the chat with experts. The Zoho Book support team is excellent. They are very responsive from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time. Highly recommend asking them any questions as well. It's a great team they have over there. And here, they'll kind of surface things like some of their tutorials, webinars that are coming up. Just like to highlight this because you can find some pretty useful information there. And then last but not least, we do have our settings cog that we'll kind of jump into in just a moment. But for that, I think I will pass it back over to you, Brett, to really dive into the nitty gritty over there inside of settings.
All right. With that, let's talk about settings inside of Zoho Books. So as Tyler mentioned, to access settings, you will go up to the settings gear in the upper right-hand corner. Now, when you click on that, it's going to break a nice drop-down down so you can kind of go anywhere to get kind of quick access to the settings. If you do choose one of the settings, though, you'll notice that menu jumps over to the left-hand side, and pretty much all those same things are there. And these kind of expand out from there. So starts with your organizational profile. You put in your company name, your industry, the type of business you are, your street address, all that kind of basic information. You can add your email services, kind of important. You go ahead and configure email preferences in there as well. Set your fiscal year. Are you on accrual cash basis? All the basic things that you want to have when setting up your company. And if you move on down to opening balances, this is where after you kind of have set up all of your accounts, you've got everything in, perhaps you want to establish those opening balances. So you're bringing everything in from January 1st, 2022. You clearly have opening balances at that point in time. You're starting there. So you can go ahead and set those for all of your different account types. So there's assets, expenses, bank accounts, liabilities, equity, income. You can do all of those. Nice way to make sure everything's clean when you get that set up. Next, you can set your user roles and permissions. When setting this up, if you were to go invite a user here, you can kind of go ahead and click in there. If you're using Zoho One, it's going to take you to the admin panel to set that up. If you're inside of Zoho Books, it's really just going to have it right there for you as well. You also have your roles here. And this is, you've got admin, staff, staff assigned customers only timesheets. This is the way of limiting it. Oftentimes, companies, you'll want to let people have access to maybe just see invoices. So you can kind of create a profile that really kind of limits what people can see. So you can go ahead and create a new role, and all of the detail. Can they see the customers and contacts? Maybe they can only view them, edit, create, delete, assign ownership. Same with items, all the banking. This is the one that most people will turn off, is they'll want to give people access maybe to books, but they don't need to see how much money's in the bank or who's been paid, or those kind of things as well. So you can basically limit a person's access by just going through, and pretty much every part of Zoho Books, you can kind of adjust their access accordingly when you're going through and setting that up. Moving then down the list, next we have warehouses. Um, if you're using Zoho Inventory, you're probably going to be running your warehouses out of there, but you also can run them out of Books, and you can enable multiple warehouses. You can have up to 5 different warehouses. Oftentimes people do this. Maybe they consider a truck a warehouse, and you've got goods on there as well. So this is where you will set up all your warehouses, and we could do an entire video on that. Probably should, Tyler. And then also we've got our preferences. This is a deep one when you move down to preferences. This is really setting up what you want for almost every aspect of Zoho Books. So you've got general preferences asking you what modules you want to see. You can set all of those up as well. You've got overall branding preferences. This is where you can put your logo in and kind of put your overall theme for everything. You can set up a custom domain. So instead of going to books.zoho.com or zoho.com/books, you can, for the portal that people want to go to, you can set up something like books.zenatta.com/portal. And then people can, if they're accessing your overall portal, they can do so using your domain. You also can go ahead and define, what are your customers? Are their customers usually businesses or individual? Do you want to enable credit limits, kind of placeholders that you're going to use for various things as you go forward? You can have some field customization, add in custom fields. You can put in custom buttons. You can add additional related lists. Those are what sit over here on the side. So you have the ability to kind of add in some custom things to customize it if it just doesn't have quite the fields that you're looking for. You also can handle the approval process out of here. It gives you a very nice example as to how this works. You can have sales approval, purchase approval, inventory approval. So nothing can get done without without it going through the proper channels. So you can't just send an invoice out to somebody without it having actually been approved. You've also got the accountant section. And in here is where you can force things like, I want to have a mandatory code for accounts. I want to have a unique account code for accounts that are created. When you're doing vendor advances, you can set those up. You also can have journal custom fields as well as chart of account custom fields. And we'll be talking about those in a little bit. You'll see where those custom fields can come into play. We already talked a little bit about users, but this is going to kind of give you an overall list of your users. But what you can do is you can add custom fields to those users. So maybe in your user field, you want to have, there's different information. You want to know what department they're in, or how they're interacting with it. So maybe you want to have something that sets them apart as a different user. You also can enable transaction numbers. So you can have the number series. So basically it's going to generate a multiple of number series for your transactions. You can set up your prefixes for those things as well. We touched on this a little bit when talking about the custom domain, but you can have a client portal. In here, customers can come in and they can see their invoices, they can see their POs, all of those kind of things. So you basically can set that up so they can come in and see what they owe, what you owe them, those kind of things as well. That, of course, on the vendor side is where you will set up, you know, your outstanding bills payable so they can see those as well. Tyler briefly touched on items. He's going to go into it a little more detail, but in items, you can set the base, what you want for those 2 decimal places. How are you measuring these, inches or centimeters? Are you doing it by weight, kilogram, grams, or ounces? You know, barcode scannings are using SKUs, ISBN, UPC codes, EANs. You can basically set up what your defaults are. Determine whether or not you want to allow duplicate names. But before you do this, you have to at least have a SKU field so they can identify what the differences are there as well. You can also enable price lists. This is where you can say, if I sell to this person or this company, they get 10% off. If I sell to this company, they're going to get 30% off. So you can kind of set those up and have different price lists associated with it as well. You can also turn on composite items. So when doing your items, what that means is maybe you have a product. We'll do something simple here. You have a candle, and that's your end product that you sell. But you also want to, but you want to kind of build that together. Maybe that is composed of 3 different things. Maybe you're doing a bundle. So maybe you could do the glass, the wax, and the wick, make up the candle. You've got those separately. The composite is the candle. That ends up being a finished good. Oftentimes it's, well, I have these 4 products and I sell them in a bundle. I want to bundle them together. So if you enable that, you can actually build composite items made out of other items in inventory. You can have serial number tracking as well, and batch tracking. All of these things could be configured inside items as well. And then moving on to estimates, I'm going to kind of skip over all of these, but basically for estimates, retainer invoice, sales invoice, packages, shipments, all the way down the line, you have the ability to add custom fields, validation rules, buttons, and related lists associated with each of those, set up your various terms and conditions. All of that can be here in the overall preferences. The same applies to purchases. The ability to go in and set up various preferences for, in this case, mileage for under expenses. What's your fuel mileage expense? You can add custom fields for vehicles. You can add vehicles in. You can have separate fields. All the same thing, kind of going through across the board here as well. Bills, again, you can have separate fields for bills, same for recurring, payments made, purchase orders. All of these very, very detailed. You can go in and add custom fields. A lot of these are just, lets me have some custom fields. I want to get a little more detail maybe for my reporting down the line. And lastly, you can set up your time tracking for projects, put some more custom fields in, and the same for timesheets. You can determine if you're rounding off maximum number of hours in a day that can be logged. This person's really working a lot. You know, track time costs for entries, timesheet approvals. You can enable all of that as it relates to timesheets. The preferences tab is very detailed. And oftentimes people miss this, but you will want to spend some time in there kind of going through it bit by bit by bit and making sure you have that set up exactly as you want. If you're dealing in multiple currencies, you can set that up in the currency tab. You can add new currencies. You can disable or enable exchange rates as well. If you're doing taxes, which most people are, you can enable sales tax. You'll notice down here they say integrate with Avalara. If you are in multiple states, actually, I think even if you're in one state, because sales tax varies from city to city, county to county. One side of the street can have a different tax than the other side of the street. Avalara is a third-party provider of sales tax data, and if you subscribe to them, based upon the location that you're selling into, it will apply the proper sales tax for you. And then you can add reporting tags. An example of this, they can be on invoices. And so you've got here the tag name is builder type or the distributor, end user, reseller. Maybe you want to, oftentimes we see people that are running personal and business out of the same set of books. So they'll want to tag something as a personal item or a business item so they can separate those out at reporting at the end. You can do a lot with these tags to kind of basically give you that, again, detailed reporting at the end of the day. Here is a big one, and that is templates. And when you're working in Zoho templates, you will see that they give you a bunch of templates that are pretty much out of the box, ready to go. Your logo will appear here. All of the information will appear here. And you have kind of standard customization across all of them. You can, the overall template, you can change the header. You can change the overall item table, what you want to have, what the total, what the footer looks like, and any annexure that you have at the very end. Every single one of these is pretty much the same. They have pretty much the same setup. Maybe there's a few different fields depending on what you're working in. Invoices is the big one. If you are coming out of Zoho CRM, the invoices in there, you'll notice, are HTML, and that gives you a lot of flexibility, and you can do heavy customization of what your invoices will look like. Out of the box, Zoho Books does not give you that level of customization. You can basically just do kind of what we talked about, very small changes to the header and the items tables and those kind of things. But if you request that they turn on HTML templates for you, Zoho will do so. So you can do that, and basically it will you can have that HTML template and basically make it do look and feel any way you would like it to look. Again, most of these are the same. I will note, if you go down to checks though, you can set up your overall check registry. They've got a basic template here for that. You can make some adjustments to that as well. But again, these kind of are all the same, just setting up your basic templates. You can spend some time in there. The ones that come out of the box are great. This just gives you some more options to kind of customize them and tweak them as you will. If we move on to emails now, boy, are there a lot of emails that you can customize inside of Zoho Books. So just straight on running down to the templates here, you've got user invites, client portal link, client review notification, project notification, timesheet notification, customer statements. They go on and on and on and on. Every single potential automated email that you would have go out, you have the ability to go ahead and modify it, create it, change it, do all of those kind of things. So it's very deep on the notification, very deep on the emails. And again, depending on how much automation you want to have inside here and notifications, you will want to spend some time going ahead and customizing your emails. Reminders. Again, there's a lot you can do here. Let's say you want to automatically remind somebody when an invoice is overdue. You can set that up. I want to send one after it's a week overdue, 2 weeks overdue, a month overdue. Every basic thing you might want to have on bills. Maybe you want to notify yourself that one's due, but you can set up very, very nice reminders, and again, completely customize the emails that are associated with those reminders as well. And then if you're familiar with Zoho CRM, you've got some automation. You can set up workflow rules. You can run custom functions using Zoho Deluge. You can do webhooks. Basically, you can go into more advanced automation using the automation tab. And then web tabs, perhaps you want to pull in something from the outside and display it inside Zoho Books. You can do that. So you've got an outside website you want to pull in. Maybe it's something that has vendor part numbers, one that you work with a lot, and rather than having to go there, you just want it to be right inside Zoho Books. So you can click on that and bring all of that data in as well. And then you've got the developer space. This is what we're talking about with webhooks, connections, shows you your API usage. You get, so if you're doing things like connecting to a third-party source and bringing in data, this is where you live there. That's normally what we're brought in for, is to kind of set this kind of stuff up for you. But you do have nice third-party integration that you can bring in here as well. Before I get to online payments, I'm going to skip that and come back. We'll talk a little bit about integrations. Zoho Books comes with a lot of nice built-in integrations. You've got AfterShip, UPS, and United States Post Office, as well as Easy Post, which is one we like a lot. For your shopping cart side of thing, you can bring in Shopify, Zoho Commerce, Magento, Woo. They are all supported from a shopping cart basis. From an e-commerce basis, they've got connections for Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Houzz. They have all those as well. You can also do SMS integrations. This is going to be done through Twilio. And then you've got all the Zoho apps. So all of these Zoho apps: CRM, Begin, Projects, People, Sign, Sales IQ, Subscriptions, Inventory, Expense, Analytics, Click, Desk, Mail, and Campaigns, all can connect into Zoho Books, providing various additional functionality and kind of, cross data. So, in the CRM, we talked about earlier, maybe you want to block it so that, people really don't have access to much in books, but you wanted to show them invoices. Well, if you connect the CRM over to Zoho Books, you can give them zero access to books and still show the invoices over inside the CRM, so they can view them there as well. Also, you can handle all of your 1099 filings. So if you are doing 1099s, they use tax 1099 and yearly, and both of those can help you with your 1099 filings at the end of the year. And then there are a slew of other applications by other vendors that are supported as well. Slack, Square, we talked about Avalara. Sure Payroll is one of the few payroll services that actually has native journal integration. So if you're less than 100 employees, 5 to 100 is the number. They have an extremely cost-effective payroll solution, and you can run your payroll through there. It'll all automatically pull into Zoho Books. Your journal entries will be automatically applied. Zapier, Fundbox, Google, and Microsoft. And then lastly, if you're going to make some various integrations, you will need to grab your key and your username. You can go ahead and use that. You will need that for some integrations. And then we'll talk a little bit here about online payments. So, big thing a lot of people want to do is they want to collect online payments. So, for credit card, Stripe is the preferred gateway, but you do have many, many, many others. So, if you're sending out an invoice, person can just click on the pay online. And if they want to pay by credit card, you can use Stripe, you can use WePay, Forte, Square, PayPal Pro, PayPal Payments Pro, Braintree Checkout, and WordPay. Authorize.net is a big one because oftentimes people are using another outside credit card provider. Maybe you've cut a special deal. You're not paying the standard 2.9% plus 30 cents a transaction. You really want to stay with your credit card processor. You can use Authorize.net and stay with that processor, and that will fully integrate as well. ACH payments, again, you can collect them through Stripe and Authorize.net or Forte. What that is basically very, very little fees. Usually it's 50 cents to a couple dollars. And if a person pays you by ACH, that money will go from their bank account to your bank account at a much lower fee. PayPal kind of gives you the best of both because if you set things up properly in PayPal, people can pay you by check. If they've set it up, they can pay you by credit card. They can make PayPal to PayPal transfers. So you also can set up PayPal. And you've also got Ideal for Ideal payments. And again, the only gateway for Ideal payments is going to be Stripe. So, and by the way, you're not limited to just one of these. You could actually have Stripe and PayPal and several others, and offer all of those options to your customers when they're going ahead and doing their payments. And with that, I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about the chart of accounts. All right, so back on the home page, you will find under the accounting section, you have the chart of accounts. And this is really important for organizing your spend and how you do things and how you set them up. So Zoho comes with most of the various charts of accounts you will need. But that doesn't mean you don't have the ability to kind of organize these into a little more detail, or maybe put them all under, maybe you want to group them and do various things like that. So oftentimes companies will want to really get, granular. You can kind of go through and you're looking at some basic expenses. You'll see accounting and marketing, travel expenses, but maybe you do trade shows. So you want to create a brand new account, and you can go in and we'll make that an expense account. You have all the different types of accounts you can put in here. So let's call this is going to be an expense. And I'm just going to call this trade shows because maybe you want to keep track of this completely differently than everything else. And I'm going to leave that like that. So now I've got a new account called trade shows. Now I want to get a little more granular. I want to track everything that goes under that trade show. So I can say here, okay, I've got another one and it's going to be an expense. And this is going to be trade show booths. I'm going to make it a sub account, and I'm going to make it a sub account of trade shows. So now I've got trade shows, trade show booths, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make a yet one more sub account to kind of show you how this all ties together here. Again, it's going to be an expense, and we'll call it trade show space expense. So you're having to rent the space at a trade show, and we're going to make that a sub account as well. and we're going to call that trade shows. So now that is under trade shows. We go ahead and save that. And now if you scroll down the page, you will see that you have trade shows, and under that you actually have the sub accounts. Really, really nice when looking at your overall roll up and reportings, because you can have everything kind of roll up to trade shows and see what the total expense for that was, or you can go a little deeper. So if you're wanting to kind of roll up some expenses, then you're going to want to use these sub accounts or sub chart of accounts. It's really helpful with that. You often see that, you've got things like, I want to have automobile expense, and I've got travel expense, and I've got hotel expenses. Oftentimes people want to roll those over into just kind of a general travel expense category, so they can look at what those are and then look at the breakdown for airfare, hotel, and other things as well. Maybe meals while they were traveling, you'll have travel meals. So depending on how you want to see your breakdown, and depending on how you want to see your expenses reported, chart of accounts is this is where you will go in and you configure it. It's fairly straightforward. One note, if you see a gear next to it, that means you can mark it as inactive or deleted it. If you don't see a gear, this is a hard coded Zoho account and you are unable to change it. So a lot of these top ones at the top, you really don't have the ability. These are kind of locked and loaded in here. They're fundamental to the way Zoho Books operates, so you actually won't be able to change them or hide them. A lot of people do ignore them, but a lot of the base functionality inside of Zoho is going to depend on these chart of accounts staying as is. And that is a quick overview of chart of accounts. And with that, Tyler, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's talk a little bit about the sales process, shall we?
Alrighty, so let us jump on in. So normally kind of the first thing you would need to do to make a sale is, of course, to add an item. In this case, we already have an item on the books here, so we're going to use this example product to kind of walk through how you would actually process a sale through Zoho Books. So under our sales tab, of course, we already have kind of a bank of customers. So we're going to pull from one of these to create our first estimate. And we'll start with an estimate kind of because that is the first step in the process. Now, I do want to highlight, you don't have to use estimates. Some people will forego them. Maybe you're going to send someone a kind of beautifully designed PDF proposal with a lot of written language and legalese, right? And then you're just going to bill from here later. So you're not locked into this flow. We're just going to kind of show it step by step how you may end up using it inside of books. So I want to highlight here on each of these pages, before you've ever created an estimate or a sales order or a package, you can actually see essentially what the flow is for using them with these screenshots. I recommend you screenshot these or these flow charts here, because they go away once you've created your first estimate. And they are very, very helpful, especially for training new people on how the system works. So essentially, you will raise an estimate, you will send it to a customer. They will either accept or reject that estimate. And then if they accept it, we can go ahead and kick it over to either a sales order or an invoice. So let's go ahead and create an estimate here to get started. We'll go ahead and choose a customer. From here, there's a variety of fields that you might want to track. It's going to give us an automatic estimate number. That's going to be the same in sales orders and invoices. They're going to auto number themselves. If you wanted to put like an expiration on this, you surely could. In this case, we'll leave that empty, but just know if you want to have kind of like an estimate that might not sit out there forever, if you're worried about stock or availability, you can kind of give it an end date. You can track your estimates based on salespeople. These can either be added custom or they will sync over from your CRM user list and actually just make it so that anybody who is a sales user in CRM is also able to be listed as a salesperson here on a record in books. You can give an estimate a subject line if you'd like to. I will in this case. I'm not creative, so I'll just go ahead and put example subject line. And now here is to kind of where we get into the nitty gritty. Here's where we'll actually start dropping in your items. So in this case, we just have the one item. So we'll go ahead and put that on here. You'll see we're currently out of stock. That's not going to stop us from moving forward. But it would be a notifier for one of your team members that, hey, let the customer know this is going to be a back order. You can adjust your quantity on this as well as your rate. So while you do have that default rate of 100, I could make this 90, right? Now that might not be the best way to do it. Rather than changing the rate, maybe we would want to, train our team to put a discount instead. Discounts can either be done based on a percentage basis, so I could drop a 10% discount in here, or it could be based on a dollar value amount. The one thing I do want to highlight is that the discount is for the amount you put in here is going to apply to the row. It's not a discount on each of the items, right? So this 100 is just going to apply to the total of quantity times rate. It's not a per item discount here. I'll go ahead and get rid of that for now. We can keep moving forward here. If you did want to attach any files, you could surely do that here. So maybe you're going to attach a blueprint or some type of additional documentation. And you can drop in any terms and conditions, which can also be set by default under the settings. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a draft now that we've dropped an item onto here. And we'll see it's going to give us a little preview of how this estimate would look in the PDF form when it's actually sent out. This estimate can then be mailed directly to the customer, or you can grab a link and send it separately if you wanted to. So if you wanted to create your own kind of templated email outside of here and just link to this estimate, you can surely do that just directly through this estimate page. So now here, because this is a demo account, I'm just going to mark this estimate as sent. And once this estimate is sent, the customer will receive an email that will give them the ability to review, download, and then accept or reject this estimate. So in this case here, we've gone ahead and marked this as sent. And once it does get approved or confirmed by the customer, we can either convert it to an invoice or to a sales order. Now, your need for using sales orders is kind of for you to determine. Oftentimes, you want to use a sales order for a few different reasons. One, if you're doing anything related to Zoho inventory and you're going to run it through Zoho Books, you want to have a sales order. You do need a sales order to create a package. So if you are going to run shipping or fulfillment out of here, you'll want to go that route. You also would want to create a sales order if you might do multiple invoices for this. So maybe 50% now and 50% on delivery. Much better practice to have a sales order and multiple invoices off of that. I'll go ahead now and just convert this over to a sales order. Looks like this might need to be accepted first. So yeah, before we can actually go ahead and convert, of course, we do need to have an acceptance from the customer. So I've gone ahead and marked that as accepted. When they do that via email, it'll automatically make this change on our side. I only had to click that button because we're kind of simulating that action. So now let's go ahead and convert this to a sales order. We'll see that it's going to pull up a very similar looking page. So we're not going to spend too much time kind of worried about this. The one thing I will highlight is that it's going to grab that estimate number and drop it in as a reference number here so that you kind of have a paper trail. Where did this sales order come from? Well, it came from estimate number 8. In this case, we'll kind of just keep moving down. We're not going to make any changes at this point because they have already accepted that estimate. So I'll save this as a draft. Now, in this case, people have different business rules. For a lot of businesses, if they're using an estimate, you're going to always just save this as confirmed, right? So you've already gotten that acceptance of an estimate. There's no reason to have this sales order sitting in this like draft or pending status. You would really only have one of these as a draft to send out to a customer if you didn't have an accepted estimate to kind of go before it, or if you didn't have some type of signed proposal or some other thing that's kind of serving as the acceptance or confirmation of this sale. So I'll go ahead and mark this as confirmed. And for here, there's a couple things that you can do. We're going to go ahead and skip the sales order cycle right here. What you can do is using their backend tools kind of automate a couple steps that you might go through when you're doing a sales order, like auto invoicing or auto packaging. In this case, we'll keep it simple. So now that we have a confirmed sales order, first it is going to highlight because we don't have any items in stock for this, it'll allow us to back order. We'll get into that a little bit later. But you can think about your sales order as the thing that connects the accounting side of the sale via the invoice with the physical side of the sale via that package. So for now, we're just going to show the invoicing. Packages is kind of unique to if you have Zoho inventory turned on, but making a package is essentially the same as making an invoice. So let's do that now. So from here, of course, you can download these, send them out, kind of email them back to the customer if they'd like a confirmation. But the big thing that we'll want to do is convert this over to an invoice. Again, very similar page to what you see on an estimate or sales order. So we'll just kind of fly through this now. Down here at the bottom, the only thing that's different on invoices is that you'll need to make sure that you've configured your payment gateways. And if there are any that you want to disable, you can disable them here. Strategy around why you might only allow certain customers to use certain payment options, we'll save that for another day. But just know you don't always have to offer every payment option to every customer. So I'll go ahead and save this as a draft, and I'll just mark it as sent because we're not going to send it to our demo account. And then now the last thing that really needs to happen in the sales process is you need to get paid. So in an ideal world, right, you'll have your online payments set up. When they pay via credit card or ACH, as long as they do it through that payment page, it's going to automatically record a payment for this invoice. In this case, I'll go ahead and record a payment manually just so we can see kind of the full flow here. So I'll record a payment. It's defaulted and assuming that I'm being paid in full. I can choose when I got paid, how I got paid, and what accounts I want to deposit that payment into. We'll just leave these as the defaults and record our payments. And now we've updated that invoice status to paid. And we'll see that we have a link over here to the payment that we did receive. Now, keep in mind, you can receive partial payments, right? So you might have two in here, 500 now, 500 later. You do have that flexibility just based on your own business rules. So now here I want to highlight something that is pretty important. If we jump back over to that sales order, right, the one that we actually created that invoice from, you'll see that we can actually see in this sales order that we've invoiced it and we've been paid, but we haven't shipped it. So that's kind of the advantage to using the sales orders, is that, again, if you're going to use all the features in books and you're going to invoice from here, you're going to package from here, you really need that sales order as kind of the top item that represents the sale as a whole. Again, that last little option here would be packages. You can create those and actually run your shipping. Like Brett mentioned, if you have Zoho inventory plugged in, you can use USPS, UPS, Easy Post, Easy Ship, kind of all those options here. But for this purposes, kind of focusing on books, we will skip over the packages section. And that will kind of round out our sales flow. So again, just as a top down, it'll be that estimate, sales order, invoice, and then payment. And you'll be able to track that whole process again as it rolls up to that sales order that you've created. With that, I think we're ready to jump over to the purchase process. Alrighty, so let us do just that. So again, purchases and sales, it's like two sides of a coin. It's going to feel really similar. So just instead of a customer, I'll have a vendor. Instead of a sales order, I'll have a purchase order. And instead of an invoice, I'll have a bill. So we'll walk through this, but we won't labor over it too much because I know that it will feel pretty similar. Again, don't forget, grab your screenshots of these flowcharts because they are very useful. So I'll go ahead and create a purchase order here. We won't go into this in too much depth. The only thing I will highlight that's a little different with a PO is that you can actually put the deliver to address as the address of a customer. So if you're drop shipping, or maybe you're going to purchase a bunch of material and you just want it delivered on site and then you'll go and install it, you can actually tell Zoho to put a customer's address as the deliver to address on your PO. That's something that some businesses are never going to touch. But if you are in a space where you're either drop shipping or implementing a bunch of hardware at a location and you don't want to bring it there yourself, you can go ahead and just have them deliver straight to your customer. Similarly to our estimates and invoices, we can go ahead and assign a amount and an item that we want to order. You can put multiple orders onto one PO. That's totally fair game, or multiple items, I should say. And as you know, you should, right? If you're going to put in a PO to a vendor, let's maximize our shipping costs, right? And put as much as humanly possible onto one PO as we send that out. Here, I'll go ahead and save this as a draft. Similar flow here. You're going to save it. You're going to send it, right? We're just going to mark it as issued because we don't have anyone real to send this to in our demo account. Once you have actually sent out the PO, again, similar to a sales order has an invoice and a package, a purchase order has a bill and a receive. So that receive is kind of like the physical arm of your purchasing process. Similarly, we're going to not focus too much on the receive. It works the same as the bill, and it is just kind of exclusive to if you have Zoho inventory connected. To go ahead and convert this to a bill, we'll use our big shiny button up here in the top right. That'll move us right along in the flow, copy over all those items. We can give this a bill number. Scrolling on down here, there's nothing really fancy you got to do. Like sales orders, you might need to put in a little more info when you convert from an estimate. Invoices, you have to pick your payment options. But here, we can just go ahead and roll it right over to a bill. And so now from our bill interface, really the last thing that we need to do is record that we have paid this, right? So this isn't money we're receiving, this is money we're sending. So I can record that we made a payment to our vendor against this bill on this date. I will quickly highlight in those online payments, if you do connect Forte can actually send the money from Zoho Books, right? So it'll connect to your bank, it'll actually process the ACH, it'll send that money directly over to your vendor. But to kind of wrap it all up for purchases, again, very similar to your sales order. When you're working in a purchase order, you'll have those links out to your bills and your receives so that you have that primary record to represent everything that kind of went on with that particular purchase. And I think with that, we have covered really the core things that you'll want to know with purchasing. Again, there's always going to be a million more things under the hood once you jump in, but that is pretty much the flow that you'll be following when you do go ahead and get started with Zoho Books. So I think at this point, we're ready to jump over to our questions and answers.
All righty. First question is from Ted Wolf. Bank feeds do seem to have their issues. Well, Ted, it's interesting as we record this, and this will be a webinar that will, live on YouTube here for the next year or two until we do our next one. Zoho is having some issues with bank feeds. They are working on it diligently. There's a change in the way bank feeds are being handled by some big banks. If you're in Canada, TD Canada is broken. If you're in the US, Chase is broken. Those are big banks, the two largest banks in both countries. But we expect them to have that resolved, here shortly. So if you are using those banks, though, you might want to, you might want to watch out here a little bit. Ted also asked, did you say Zoho Expense instead of using expenses inside Zoho Books if you have Zoho One?
Yeah, it's a good idea. Especially, it depends on the type of expenses. You don't have to mutually or exclusively use Zoho Expense and log no expenses directly into Zoho Books. But for things like, hey, you took a client out for dinner, right? Getting that expense, submitted, approved with an image of the receipt attached is just a lot easier for the standard user over inside of Zoho Expense. You might have ongoing expenses, though, that you want to log just directly into books, like leases, rent, things like that don't really make sense to go through the expense app.
Yeah, Elizabeth Clark asks, anyone got any suggestions on the best way to handle unusual tax amounts? Example, if the invoice is just for VAT, it doesn't seem to let you manually edit the tax. Tyler, I'm not sure about this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Be thinking, Elizabeth, if you're still in chat, is the VAT like an invoice item, and you actually have it like on the invoice as its own item at the cost of the VAT? Because if that's the case, it would depend on how you're calculating your sales tax. If you have it set up with Avalara, you may be able to put an exclusion on that item specifically. You can assign like tax codes and like map it to something that's tax exempt or sales tax exempt. If you're using the standard taxes where you've like kind of created a tax table directly in books, I don't know if you can do a like per item exclusion. So it would kind of just depend on like how you're tracking that VAT and how you're calculating your taxes now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, so John Otta is our director of finance here over at Zenatta, and he is truly the guru on this. We will have him post something over at Club Zenatta. If you're not familiar, that's our little community where you can actually ask questions for the CRM Zen show. There's a whole dialogue that goes on over there. And we will have, I'll have John post a response to that over at club.zenatta.com. I'll have him call you out, Elizabeth. I don't know if you're a member there, but if you are, just go ahead and join. And
Got it. So it's an import VAT and it's like a line item. Yeah, your best case
yeah,
is if you are using Avalara, just set up like the item code to map to a tax exempt category inside of Avalara. Otherwise, though, it might be a little tricky if you're just using the tax tables.
yeah. We've got a couple questions from Connectic. I like that name. What is best to do estimates, books or CRM? They're separate until you make them not separate. So if you're just using Zoho CRM, you will have invoices and you will have estimates and you will have all those things. And it's kind of like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about this, how if you're used to using Zoho CRM to do invoices and those things, it's all HTML based. So you really can customize those any way you want. But when you integrate Zoho CRM into Zoho Books or the finance suite in general, you have the option to hide those. Highly recommended. And so you're basically, you hide all of the CRM invoices, estimates, all of those kind of things, and then you will replace them with the ones in Zoho Books. Now, there are some companies, though, that want to do that a little differently. Tyler, like, they like having the estimates there. They like the flexibility that they have. And so
Mhm.
it's really kind of a catch-22. But I think the most, if you're using books, go ahead and get rid of the estimates inside CRM. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes that's kind of the workflow just because the estimates that are coming from books can be digitally accepted. And then can kick off future automations. Whereas the like quote document or estimate document that comes out of CRM natively is just a PDF, right? So they're not going to be able to signal back to you that they want to accept that estimate.
All right. And then Business Growth Success asks, how can you set up departmentalized financial statements? It's going to be using tags for the most part. So if the part where I was covering over in setups where you can set up the various tags, you can set up that way. That is going to be one of the best ways to do it. I don't know. Any other ideas on your part there, Tyler?
Yeah, it would mostly have to be tags, but that can honestly be its own video as well, kind of just a breakdown because they Zoho Books uses reporting tags for a lot of things. They're like a pretty important little element in there. So you could surely go through and kind of tag all your various transactions to assign them to different departments.
And then Connected asks, can items in books be managed the same way in CRM? If the CRM and books are connected, they're the same. They're
Yeah.
synchronized between the two.
But you want to manage everything in books. So like if you're using that integration where you have your books syncing to CRM, it will sync all your books items into the CRM products module. Depending on what fields you've added or filled in inside of books, you might have to add custom fields in CRM to capture all the data. But then on an ongoing basis, you want to pretty much exclusively use Zoho Books for making any new items or making edits to any existing items.
All right. And then Stephanie Warfield, can we initiate a refund from Zoho? Yes, you can. We probably should make a separate video on that though, because it's a little bit of a process to do that with online payments connected. Yes, yes, you can do that. And again, we'll put something to that. We'll probably put an answer to that over in Club Zenatta as well and show you how to do that. All right, Mary Beth wants to know, how can I create a check to print in Zoho to reimburse an employee that submitted an expense report without creating a double entry? You just mark the check as the payment method. So very simple when you're paying the bill, and it's just a simple way to do that. You're saying creating a double entry. I guess I'm confused about the double entry part of this because really, if you're paying that, if you submit it as an expense bill and you pay it, you've got several ways. You're paying it out of a checking account, but how did you pay it? There shouldn't be a double entry there. All right. And Connectic asks, how would you manage more than one supplier for a specific item in terms of pricing, cost versus sell?
Price lists. So you can create price. We didn't dive too much into price lists in this webinar, but you can create either customer or vendor price lists and actually associate one item with multiple vendors on like the purchasing side of house. And you can have different prices or at least default prices assigned for the various vendors of one item.
Hyam asks, what program are you using to broadcast the webinar? Uh, we are using something called Ecamm Pro or Ecamm Plus. I'm not sure which one it is. This entire show is managed out of McAllen, Texas, basically. Tyler's in Cincinnati. I'm here in Southern California. It's kind of a nice way of doing things. We're actually going to do something on this as well. I'm also asked, is there any way to receive quantity? Is that greater than or less than? I always can never
Oh,
figure that
yeah.
out.
I see what you're saying. So if you have a PO for 10 units, you receive 11. Can you mark the receive as 11 units? No, I don't think you can actually. I think you can only receive the amount that's on the PO. I could be mistaken. If anyone else, if I'm mistaken, someone drop that in chat, but I think you can only receive up to the amount that's on the PO that you're looking to receive against.
All right. Well,
Good
we want to
feature
thank
request, though.
everybody.
Send that
What was
Zoho's
that?
way. So that's something I might send Zoho's way if that is the case, though, because that could be a tweak they need to make.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions or comments, please head over to club.zenatta.com. You can leave them there. If you want to talk to Tyler or myself, then go ahead to zenatta.com and you can book a meeting with us.
And on the website is where you'll find complete episodes of our podcast, the CRM Zen Show, where we cover every update in the world of Zoho every single week. We'd love if you would follow us on your favorite social media platform and subscribe to us here on YouTube, as well as your choice of podcast app. We'll see you next month or next week or whenever our next piece of content comes out.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Take care.